Lakers fans, there's a lot to unpack right now. And the latest results around the league, this gave Los Angeles a very interesting opportunity in the Western Conference race. Over the last 24 hours, several games unfolded in a way that could end up helping the Lakers create some breathing room in the standings. And if the team takes advantage of this moment, the next stretch of games could define how the final part of the season plays out. One of the biggest developments came when Houston suffered a brutal defeat against Denver. It was the kind of game where things got out of control early and never really recovered. The Rockets simply could not keep up and ended up getting overwhelmed from start to finish. Blowouts happen in the National Basketball Association, of course. Even strong teams sometimes have nights where nothing works and the opponent catches fire. But when you step back and look at Houston's situation more closely, it also highlighted some of the same issues that have followed them throughout the season. Houston has talent, no question about it, but the offensive consistency just has not always been there. The team relies heavily on a primary scoring option to carry the load on many nights. And when that rhythm is disrupted, the offense can suddenly look very limited. When you reach the later stages of the season and the intensity increases, that lack of balance can become a real problem. Playoff basketball usually exposes those kinds of weaknesses, and when defenses lock in and force teams to find secondary solutions, depth and shot creation across the roster become critical. That is part of the reason why many people have remained cautious about labeling Houston as a true championship threat. The potential is there, but the structure of the offense still raises questions. When the pressure rises and every possession matters, teams that rely too heavily on one offensive engine often struggle to keep the same level of production. The Lakers, on the other hand, have been navigating their own challenges, yet they continue to stay right in the middle of the fight for positioning in the Western Conference. Another important result came from Minnesota's loss against Los Angeles' other team in the city rivalry. The Timberwolves dropped a game in which their opponent exploded offensively and pushed the pace all night long. When a team allows that many points, it usually means the defense was never able to settle in or slow things down. Minnesota has been one of the teams battling directly with the Lakers in the standings, so every loss they take at this stage of the season becomes significant for the race. For Los Angeles, these outcomes combine to create a situation where every upcoming game carries enormous value. The standings are incredibly tight, and a single victory can shift multiple positions in the conference table. At the moment, the Lakers find themselves tied with other contenders in terms of overall record, which means the next few games could determine whether they climb into the top tier of the playoff bracket or remain locked in a crowded middle section. The upcoming matchup against Chicago now becomes the immediate focus. On paper, it is a game the Lakers should be able to handle if they bring the right energy. However, longtime fans know that certain opponents have a strange history of catching Los Angeles off guard. Every season seems to include one of those nights where the Lakers unexpectedly drop a game they were expected to win, and Chicago has occasionally been that type of team. That is why the mindset going into this matchup must be serious from the opening tip. A victory there would set the stage for an even bigger confrontation shortly after. The following game against Denver could end up being one of the most important of the entire regular season. When two teams competing for playoff position meet directly, the impact goes beyond just one entry in the win column. It also affects confidence, momentum, and potential tie-breaking scenarios that might matter once the regular season reaches its conclusion. Right now, the Lakers sit with 40 wins and 25 losses, placing them right alongside other teams fighting for the same territory in the Western Conference standings. The margin between several teams is incredibly small, which means that a strong week can suddenly push a team up multiple spots. At the same time, a brief slump can send a team sliding down the bracket just as quickly. This is the reality of a conference race where almost every contender has experienced periods of inconsistency throughout the year. Minnesota, for example, recently slipped into a short losing stretch, which opened the door for Los Angeles to keep pace and potentially move ahead. When teams are this close in the standings, the head-to-head matchups and tie-breaking advantages become extremely valuable. The Lakers have positioned themselves in a way where continuing to match the results of their closest rivals could eventually work in their favor as the final games approach. Denver remains another major factor in the equation. The Nuggets are always dangerous because of their experience and their ability to execute in high-pressure situations. Even so, the standings show that they are not far ahead of the pack. Every time Denver drops a game, the gap narrows even further, which is exactly why the upcoming meeting between the Lakers and the Nuggets has the potential to swing momentum in a big way. If Los Angeles takes care of business in the games directly in front of them, they can begin to create real separation. That is the key word at this stage of the season. Separation means building a cushion that protects you from one unexpected loss later on. Without that cushion, every game becomes even more stressful because the standings remain completely volatile. The encouraging part for Lakers fans is that the team still controls its own path. Despite injuries, lineup changes, and stretches of uneven performance earlier in the year, the Lakers are still right where they need to be. They are within striking distance of the top positions in the conference, and that opportunity exists because the rest of the field has also experienced ups and downs throughout the season. Around the league, very few teams have maintained elite consistency from opening night until now. Several contenders have gone through phases where they looked dominant, only to cool off later and return to the pack. That pattern has kept the Western Conference standings extremely competitive, and it is exactly why this final portion of the schedule could become one of the most dramatic finishes the conference has seen in years. For the Lakers, the focus must remain simple. When the games that are in front of you, especially the ones against teams fighting for the same playoff territory, every victory not only improves the record, but also sends a message to the rest of the conference that Los Angeles is prepared to compete when the stakes are highest. And with the schedule about to present several direct battles that could shape the playoff picture, the next few nights on the court might reveal just how high this team can climb before the regular season finally reaches its final chapter. At the same time, it is impossible to ignore the context surrounding the Lakers right now, especially when it comes to health and roster availability. One of the biggest questions heading into the next stretch of games revolves around who will actually be on the floor. Several key rotation pieces have been dealing with physical issues, and when multiple players are unavailable at the same time, it forces the coaching staff to rethink the entire game plan. There is a realistic possibility that Los Angeles could enter one of these games missing several contributors who normally play meaningful minutes. When you start talking about 3 or even 4 players potentially unavailable, that changes the rhythm of the rotation immediately. Lineups that normally appear only in short stretches suddenly have to carry longer minutes, and players further down the bench are asked to step into more demanding roles. That situation does not necessarily mean the Lakers cannot win, but it does raise the level of difficulty. Depth becomes essential in moments like this, because the schedule does not slow down just because a team is dealing with injuries. Every opponent on the calendar still expects a full effort, and in a conference race this tight, every single game matters. The matchup against Chicago illustrates that perfectly. On paper, the Lakers have the stronger roster and should be capable of controlling the game if they play with discipline. But games are never decided on paper, and Chicago has shown many times that they can surprise teams when the pace and momentum swing in their favor. That is why the Lakers cannot afford to approach this game casually. Even with a short-handed roster, the focus has to be on executing the fundamentals from the opening minutes. One encouraging trend for Los Angeles recently has been the way the team has begun to stabilize its performances at home. Earlier in the season, there were moments when the Lakers struggled to protect their own court, dropping games that fans expected them to win comfortably. Over the past stretch, however, the energy at home has looked different. The players appear more comfortable, the defense has shown better communication, and the offense has started to flow with more confidence. That shift could not come at a better time. The Lakers are currently in the middle of a sequence of home games, and taking advantage of that environment could be the difference between holding a strong playoff position and falling back into the crowded middle of the standings. Home games provide an opportunity to build momentum, especially when the crowd becomes involved and the team feeds off that energy. Another factor that cannot be overlooked is the mental aspect of this season. The Lakers are one of the most discussed teams in the entire league, and with that attention comes constant scrutiny. Every loss becomes a headline, every mistake becomes a topic of debate, and every performance is analyzed from every possible angle. For the players inside the locker room, staying focused through that noise requires discipline and maturity. What often gets lost in those conversations is the reality that many other teams around the league are experiencing similar struggles. When you examine the records closely, several contenders sit within just a few games of each other. There are very few teams that have dominated from beginning to end without any setbacks. Yet the spotlight often shines brightest on Los Angeles because of the franchise's history and global fan base. Despite all of that pressure, the Lakers have managed to stay in the middle of the playoff race. That alone says something about the resilience of the roster. Through injuries, lineup changes, and periods where the chemistry was still developing, the team continued to fight for wins and keep itself relevant in the standings. Now the opportunity is there to turn that resilience into a strong finish. Another element that could shape the rest of the season is the upcoming head-to-head matchups with teams competing for the same position. Games against rivals like Houston and Denver carry extra weight because they can directly influence tie-breaking scenarios. Winning those contests does more than add another victory to the record. It also creates leverage if two teams finish with identical records at the end of the regular season. For example, if the Lakers manage to take control in their remaining matchups against Houston, that could swing the balance in the standings later. In such a tight race, even one additional win can shift the entire playoff picture. Securing the advantage in those direct confrontations might end up being the factor that decides whether a team finishes in the top 3 or falls to the 4th or 5th position. Momentum is another powerful force at this stage of the year. Teams that find their rhythm late in the season often carry that confidence straight into the playoffs. The Lakers understand this well, because past seasons have shown how quickly a team can transform once everything begins to click. A strong defensive stretch, improved ball movement on offense, and consistent contributions from the bench can suddenly change the trajectory of the entire campaign. Right now, the Lakers appear to be approaching that critical moment where the identity of the team becomes clearer. The players know what is at stake. The coaching staff understands the importance of every rotation decision, and the fans can feel the tension building as the final stretch of the regular season approaches. If Los Angeles handles the upcoming games the way they are capable of, the standings could start to separate in their favor. A victory against Chicago would immediately strengthen their position and add pressure to the teams chasing them. Following that with a strong performance against Denver could amplify that momentum even further, potentially giving the Lakers a cushion that seemed impossible just a few weeks ago. Before we continue, we ask that you leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any exclusive Lakers updates. Moving on, in the quiet corridors of the NBA rumor mill, a whisper has begun to grow louder. The Los Angeles Lakers could be preparing one of the most shocking moves of the offseason. The speculation? A potential blockbuster involving none other than LeBron James and a surprising destination with the Golden State Warriors. While no official talks have been confirmed, insiders around the league have begun hinting that the Los Angeles Lakers might be considering a dramatic shift in direction. The idea circulating behind the scenes is that the franchise could explore moving James in a deal that would send the four-time champion to Golden State in exchange for a package of assets designed to reshape the Lakers roster. Such a scenario would immediately send shockwaves through the National Basketball Association. James, long considered the centerpiece of the Lakers' modern era, has remained one of the league's most influential players both on and off the court. Yet with questions about roster depth, long-term planning, and the need for fresh talent, some executives believe the Lakers could at least listen if the right offer appears. From Golden State's perspective, the possibility of pairing James with Stephen Curry has long fascinated fans and analysts. The two have spent years as rivals on the sport's biggest stage, their clashes shaping an entire era of basketball. Imagining them on the same side of the floor would instantly create one of the most intriguing super team concepts in recent memory. For the Lakers, The rumor motivation would not necessarily be a rebuild, but rather a strategic reset. By moving their veteran superstar, the organization could potentially acquire multiple rotation players, draft assets, or young talent capable of extending the team's competitive window. Of course, around the league there remains heavy skepticism. Trading a global icon like James is never a simple decision, particularly for a franchise that thrives on star power and championship expectations. Even so, executives often remind each other that the NBA has become a league where once unthinkable trades can suddenly become reality. For now, the possibility remains just that, a rumor drifting through front offices and locker rooms. But if the speculation proves to have even a hint of truth, the Lakers may be quietly preparing the kind of off-season twist that no one saw coming. And if it happens, the balance of power across the NBA could shift overnight. Stay informed exclusively about Los Angeles Lakers news. Subscribe to our channel and hit the like button to keep receiving daily updates. Also, share your opinion on the news in the comments, as your contribution is crucial for the Lakers. Stay tuned for the next video.